Welcome to the channel, folks. I really appreciate you guys clicking on the video. I know it's been quite a while since I've done any kind of update on the $600 TransAm project for you guys, and quite a lot has happened in the last few months, so let's get you back up to speed. Obviously, I got a big box of goodies from Jegs there to show you guys, and there's a carburetor sitting up here on the hood because I had some carburetor problems and just wanted to show you a little bit of what I was doing. This is my parts Quadrajet, and I had a couple of different carburetor problems, and as far as I know, it's the original carburetor. It's definitely the original style of carburetor, a Quadrajet with computer hookups just like this one. And like I was saying, I had a couple different issues, and this is one of them. This is what I'm assuming would be called an accelerator pump plunger. I'm not totally sure about that. Excuse me. But I was having some issues with wide open throttle performance. The car was stumbling and hesitating and just running like junk in general. And I opened up the carburetor looking for any obvious issues, and that thing is the first thing that I found. Its little rubber piece down there on the bottom was busted, and I was able to luckily remove a new one from out of my parts carburetor and put it in there for free. And the other carburetor issue that I was talking about having is kind of a strange one. It's related to the hood scoop. I had to take the plastic part of this hood scoop here off of the car and take the old gasket out of there and replace it with some silicone, because I was actually having water run straight down into both the fuel bowl of the carburetor and the intake of the motor. And I don't know how long it's been doing that, but the car sat for years before I got a hold of it, and I can't believe that water running into the motor hasn't killed this engine yet, and the engine sounds great too. As far as I know, it's the original engine. It is a low compression Smogger 305 with the air injection and all that stuff. And everything indicates that it's the original motor, so I'm 90% sure, even though I haven't, checked to see if the numbers match. Another minor carburetor issue that I was having with the thing is this little hanger right here that moves with the secondary air flapper. It's hard to show you guys because the carb's not put together properly, but this little hanger has a couple of what I'm assuming are called metering rods hanging from it, and one of them was bent, and those things pretty much control secondary enrichment, and the one that was bent was way out of whack, and it was part of the wide open throttle problem for sure. This accelerator pump component being broken combined with the enrichment rod being way out of whack was just really screwing with the way the car ran. And the car ran really good at first when I first got it started, and it kind of slowly developed a couple little carburetor problems, and I'm really curious as to how the little hanger right there may have gotten bent, but I bent it back into place with some needle nose pliers. Before I took the carb off the car, I also checked with some carb cleaner while the engine was running. I sprayed all my vacuum lines and things like that and all around the base of the carb, and tracked down actually 4 or 5 different vacuum leaks and fixed them all with either a new piece of hose or some thread tape or whatever was required for each individual vacuum leak. But fixing all the vacuum leaks, fixing the accelerator pump problem here, and the hanger enrichment issue, and getting all the water out of the carburetor for good has really drastically improved the way the car runs. It just runs so much better now. The car has excellent throttle response. It starts up and sounds great and runs great. I'll give you guys a quick little example of that just for the heck of it. I've been keeping it pretty clean in the interior here. Same cheap seat covers that I put on there, and Dad found some floor mats for me. I've also got a real tachometer in here now instead of that cheap Chinese junk. It took it a second to get warmed up there. It was wanting to shut off, and it's still acting a little temperamental, as you see. I'm going to adjust the fast idle up a little bit, maybe get it to fast idle at about 1500 RPM when it's cold. gas packs sound really good. One of the next things I want to get for the car is a temperature gauge to go in here. The factory temp gauge, there it is. Factory temp gauge quit working, but the oil pressure and battery gauge are still good, so, you know, no reason to replace them. Alright, so now that we've talked about the problems that have been fixed and started up the car, let's go ahead and get to the goodies. I bought all this stuff with some Christmas money, combined Christmas money from a couple of family members whom I'm really grateful to. I'm very lucky to have a good family, you know, that comes together at Christmas time and gets each other gifts and stuff like that. The first cool thing for the car you can see is this Excel HEI tune-up kit. I'm going to put this better cap, rotor, and coil and stuff like that, also module, on my factory HEI distributor, and I want to keep the car looking as stock as possible and go for kind of a sleeper look as well as have a basically stock engine. So I'm going to paint this thing flat black. I'm going to etch and prime it first too, you know, so the paint doesn't come off, but I'm going to do a good job painting it flat black and make it look just like the factory distributor cap and coil and all that stuff. And that's the first thing I got for it. This thing was a really good price, by the way. If you guys have an HEI ignition and you're looking to get it tuned up. Next thing I got for the car is a Spectre knockoff of a K&N filter. And that's going to go in the stock air box, or the air cleaner lid. Air cleaner assembly, excuse me, I'll say it right eventually. And with that in the factory air cleaner assembly, it should run really good because this hood scoop is actually functional. It's sealed to the air cleaner assembly, and you know, I don't want to take it off and put some cheesy cheap chrome air cleaner on there like everybody else had, especially when the hood scoop actually works right. Just get it working better with a cotton air filter element. And obviously you can see one of the next things I got on there is a 4-hole phenolic plastic. I'm assuming it's plastic. It's a heat resistant material of some sort, but it's a phenolic 4-hole spacer for a quadrijet, and it's 1 inch thick. And for those of you guys that aren't really up on carburetors, this fits underneath the carburetor as a spacer. It does the same thing as a throttle body spacer if you've ever heard of one. It slightly increases your intake plenum volume, and it insulates the carburetor from the heat of the motor and helps cool your fuel charge, which helps produce power in mysterious ways. And on top of that, this is a 4-hole spacer, and I'm putting it on one of those factory GM 4-hole style intakes because you're not supposed to run an open spacer on one of those, but the 4-hole spacers are supposed to increase torque, and this car's got a fair amount of torque for a 305. In fact, it's got really good torque for a small cubic inch V8 engine. But anything that you can do to increase torque on a small cubic inch V8 engine is usually a good thing. But don't just jump straight for a 4-hole spacer. You want to try which one is better on your car, 4-hole spacer or open, if you can run an open spacer on your intake. Next couple things I bought for the car are super simple. It's just a 160-degree thermostat and a gasket for it. That's to get the motor running cooler. I put a temperature gauge radiator cap on the car, and it looks like it's running at about 190 or 200 degrees. And 160-degree thermostat will cut down the engine compartment temperature and help produce power for sure. The next thing I grabbed for the car was some very affordable Jegs brand 8.5 millimeter fat plug wires, and they, in my opinion, will look, you know, they won't make people bat their eye as much as a yellow or a red or a blue plug wire would, but it's a good high-performance wire that is in keeping with my, you know, sneaky factory sleeper look. There's one more piece that came in this order in particular that I don't have in the box because I already installed it, and it's an energy suspension red polyurethane transmission mount. And I actually installed it in conjunction with a Global Transmission Parts Super Servo, which is a really, really good hard shifting servo for your 700R4 and other servo-controlled GM-type transmissions. I'll show you a picture real quick of the servo and the transmission mount that I installed as I was installing them. Unfortunately, I didn't take any video of that. I've been looking into making a tripod for my camera so that I can film work a lot better, because you know, at the moment I can't really get any sort of good angle on any work. But I've installed that servo and that red transmission mount, and I'm absolutely loving it. It made this car shift super hard and super crisp, and as it advertises, it really feels like it eliminated any slip that there may have been, not only in between shifts, but in every gear. And it worked wonders for this transmission. Shifting really hard for a car that just has, you know, a stock small block and a stock 700 R4 with a 323 gear. But it won't have a 323 gear for long. That's because one of the last things I've got to show you here is a Jegs 410 gear ring and pinion kit for the car, and I've got an installation kit for it as well, and I've got a mini spool for it because that was the cheapest way to get both back wheels pulling, and I've also got the gear oil to throw it all together. The mini spool, I know a lot of you guys are probably like, oh man, that car is not going to be very much fun to drive with a totally locked rear end. Well, I mean, you know, I'm pretty much going to need both back tires to pull if I put this low of a gear in the car, especially when it's already doing little one-wheel wonders and running so good. And this was, you know, basically a necessary thing within my budget, because this mini spool cost, I think, like $70 or $80 with the cross pin that came with it. And, you know, most Positraction setups are usually pretty expensive. They're, you know, a few $100s typically. And this spool was going to be a whole lot easier to install, as well as a lot cheaper to buy. So I just felt like it was the best option. And these cars already drive pretty good anyway, so having a completely locked rear end is definitely going to hinder it, but it's not going to be as bad as it would be, you know, driving something that had totally ill handling manners to begin with. And the last thing I got for the car is this B&M kickdown component. What it does is allow you to use fourth gear. For those of you that are unaware of this, the early 700 R4s, and maybe even all of them for all I know, actually wouldn't let you get fourth gear at full throttle. Basically use it as a highway overdrive for cruising. And they had the transmission set up to force you back into third gear when you would floor it, and that is a workaround for this. This lets you stay in fourth gear with it floored if you have fourth gear selected. And obviously that's going to increase the car's top speed drastically. So what's funny is I'm going to be lowering the car's gear ratio to increase the acceleration, which normally is a trade-off and takes top speed away from you, but this part will actually regain the top speed I've lost from changing the gear ratio, and potentially more. I've been looking at some gear ratio calculators on andysautosport.com, which I'll try to put a link to in the description, and I was able to get a rough idea of what this car's top speed is going to be. If I remember correctly, with these size tires, which are 235/60/15s, and this kickdown kit and this rear gear of the car should be capable of 141 miles an hour, if I'm remembering correctly. And if I switch to a 28-inch tall tire instead of, I think, a 26, which might be what I have now, then it would potentially be capable of breaking 150. But all in all, I've got a bunch of really cool drivetrain mods for the car here. I've already installed the shift servo because it was really easy to install. It was way easier than installing a shift kit. Got the car shifting super hard. I'm going to make it so you can use fourth gear at wide open throttle and drastically increase the acceleration, and basically just totally tighten up the drivetrain of the car and slightly increase the performance of the engine while keeping it as bone stock as possible. Just minor modifications to the totally stock engine. And the car is already surprisingly fast, so when I finish getting this gear in here, man, this thing is going to be really freaking some people out. They're going to be thinking I'm a liar, you know. Oh, hell no, that 305 ain't stock. But anyways, guys, the sun's going down out here. It's getting dark. I've been rambling for a while. I'd really like to take the car down the road right now, but it's getting to be rush hour. I'm going to show you guys how it drives sometime soon when the traffic dies down. I'm going to basically take it a block up the street and back with my camera pointed at the tachometer so you can see how hard it's shifting. But believe me, when I say it's shifting hard, this car is shifting hard, and it's a lot of fun to drive. I was just wrapping up the video and almost forgot to give you guys the bad news. Unfortunately, the driver's side headlight stopped coming up. It's still coming on, but it's not raising. Alrighty folks, thanks for watching. Y'all take it easy.